Dear Vincent Vet, this is a letter I composed, which is largely fictional. First of all, thank you for emailing those excerpts from Lindsay's letters. And thank you, too, for letting me share them with the congregation. I promise not to disclose her name. I'm trying to write a sermon for Veterans Sunday, and I thought reading those excerpts from her might be a good way to start. She, by the way, is 10 years old and wrote these letters when her father was deployed to Afghanistan. Dear Daddy, Mommy said I could write any time I wanted, so here goes. Yesterday when you went into the airplane, Mommy started crying. Then Billy, even Eric. I've changed the names. We miss you. Dear Daddy, how are you? Have you gotten there yet? Where are you going to be stationed? The Army won't tell us. We really do miss you. Today at school, Christopher said you were going over to kill a bunch of people. He said you would be a murderer, but then Mrs. Hammond told us to sit down and be quiet. Later, I told him you would never kill anyone. Would you? Please write and tell me. Dear Daddy, I'm really worried about Mommy. She cries a lot and doesn't get up in the morning until late. Kimmy's mom has been coming over in the morning to give us breakfast and get us ready for school. When we come home, Mom is still in her bathrobe. Uncle Dennis is coming over tonight to talk to her. I think she misses you a lot. Are you okay? We get no letters from you. Yesterday, Eric got suspended from school for fighting. He's been getting bad grades. He and Mom fight all the time. I wish you could come home so our family could be happy again. I still love you, Daddy. Vincent, no wonder you described yourself as feeling like an exile, even before you come home. It's certainly true that we observe Veterans Day annually, but somehow this year feels different to me. And I think that's true for a lot of people for whom this coming Tuesday is going to be a lot more than a day off from work. Here at the church on the Cape, we're going to have our first ever 8 a.m. flag raising with the Veterans Breakfast to follow. And then when the hour strikes 11, some of us are going to be at Peace Grove at UNE to be a part of their first annual Veterans Day observance. And even that doesn't feel like enough this time around. Why is that? Maybe the answer was in the Portland Press Herald. I read that as the war in Afghanistan continues to march toward closure, more veterans are coming home. And since Maine is on the record as being the second highest state in per capita enlistment, maybe that's why, even subconsciously, we feel an influx. I don't know. But back to you. When is it going to be your time to be released from exile? And what can I do to welcome you home? I was reading this past week about an organization called Maine Troop Greeters. They're based in Bangor, and from what I understand, people volunteer to drive an hour or two to meet returning veterans at the airport. They just show up at 2 or 3 a.m. whenever the flight arrives, and they come bearing snacks and their fully charged cell phones for whomever wants to make a call home ASAP. They clap and they cheer and they shout, "Welcome back!" And then they return to their cars and drive home. Would that be something you'd like me to do? I would. I will. We as a church can do that for you when you come home. You'd be amazed by the number of people from the church on the Cape who would come out to greet you, day or any time of night. But I don't know if all that hoopla would just feel as if some well-meaning civilians were trying to put a bandage on your cancer. As I said, I don't know. And now that we're on the topic, how do you feel about parades? One veteran I read wrote that cheering combat soldiers seemed to him like applauding surgeons for performing amputations. In other words, to his mind, it's just too painful an experience to put into the framework of a celebration. Whatever transpires, bottom line, I just hope and pray that your transition back home isn't going to be too much of an ordeal. It was for my father. He had enlisted in World War II when my oldest sister was 2 years old, and he didn't come home until after her 5th birthday. Here, those 3 years, he had fantasized about how much fun they'd have when he got back. He'd read to her, and they'd get a dog and go on walks together. And then they'd take the trip to the library, and he'd read some more. But then came reality. And the days didn't quite unfold in the way he'd envisioned. In fact, he came to feel like an alien in his own home, like an exile. Little Janet was convinced that 2 was company, but 3 was definitely a crowd. Yet I know that your fears regarding assimilation go deeper than that. You wrote in your last letter that you never felt violent before, and that you were afraid that this war was making you into someone altogether different from the person who boarded the plane for deployment. You said that you'd always been taught to believe that killing was wrong, and thou shalt not had been chiseled into your soul. But now you've been given new commandments. Thou better kill, be killed, or suffer the shame of not trying. And you're afraid that once you get home, you won't be able to switch back to your former mindset. You're afraid that certain triggers will set you off and that you'll get angry, really angry. And I can hear you, Vince. I don't know what your fear feels like because I haven't been where you are. But I can tell you, you're not alone. Thousands of returning vets feel the same way you do. And they come home and then hopefully go for help, doing cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive processing therapy, exposure therapy, you name it. There are all kinds of programs out there. Yet, my biggest word of advice is don't try a self-cure, thinking that by sheer force of will you can get a grip on what you've been describing to me in your letters. I know I'm sounding preachy here, Vince, but once you get home, yes, get therapy, but come back to church. Come be with people who believed in you before and believe in you now and believe in the power that comes in surrendering to someone much greater than we. Come because we know that no amount of personal and inner darkness can ever diminish the light of God, and that light is here for you. Be with people for whom Christ has been a very real night light in their lives. Yes, I know on the outside it looks as if everybody here has it all together, but lots of people have been rescued from hell here. Let them tell you about it, and let yourself listen. And then ask Christ to do his work within your soul, because no job is too big for him. I don't expect you to feel changed overnight, although that's a possibility. But I do believe that if this war led to behavior which violated your moral instincts, then join him in strengthening those good and positive instincts that are so alive in you. Go visit the veterans in Scarborough. Do a walk on Grace Street with Pastor Mayer in Portland. Volunteer at Habitat. Serve food at Bon Appetit. Work in the cargo shop. And give peace a chance. Yes, I'm talking about peace in the world, but I'm talking too about inner peace, the kind that comes when we fully believe that the Lord will be our light, our everlasting light, and that our days of mourning can be ended. Not because of the brightness that is within us, but because of his that will never be extinguished. Now it's time for me to stop. I've been going on much too long. But I just want to close by saying that Veterans Day, as you know, had originally been named Armistice Day in commemoration of the ending of the Great War. And I've always loved that name, armistice, because I remember enough Latin to recall that arm means arms or weapons or warfare. And stis, as in solstice, means stop. I pray that this year warfare can end and your inner warfare will cease. I believe in you. I believe in him. I believe in the everlasting light. Yours, Ruth.